where when you get like this kind of overbought, what can happen is like you'll get these kind of midday dumps out of nowhere. But we're not necessarily like in a spot where we're like crazy, extended, where it's like a surefire thing, where you get like a big fade out of it. So I do anticipate probably at some point, we'll probably pull back a little bit today. But whether is a big one, probably not. The dips have been getting bought intraday. So, even if we pull back like 0.5% or, 0.8% or whatever it might be, the dips they start rounding and then they get bought up. And so we do have like a really positive and constructive price action. If you're looking at the market breadth here, this is really the telltale sign, not necessarily the indexes, but if you see here the T2108, you're at a 72 in market breadth. Like that's really impressive to go like in a span of just a short period of time, from basically oversold to almost overbought in market breadth. This is like we haven't been really this high, since, if you see here, like the 72 stochastics, we haven't been this high since back here. So that would have been November. So that was when the bear market started, right? So that's like a really interesting thing of like in terms of market breadth, percentage stocks over its 40-day moving average. And if you notice here, like, the number of breakouts every day has been really significant. And beyond that, and the breakdowns have been very low. So we have a shift in market breadth where there's what we would call a breadth thrust, meaning that there's a broad-based buying spree that's happening. You guys probably see it because like small caps are going, right? There's like a whole subset of stocks that are like running around. So we'll see like what's going on over here, and we'll get these things going. But beyond that, like you could see here, like there's really a whole host of a PR plays. So let's look at the PR plays here, and then we'll go from there. It is like probably, as you guys have probably noticed, a little bit of an easier trading environment when the market's like this. So it is a good time to, you don't want to get like too crazy because at the tail end of this, because we've already been running for a few days, but you do want to, be real cognizant that there are a lot of setups going on. And so you want to keep hunting throughout the day. What's happening is like, like you have this stuff like, we missed this yesterday because we had all bailed, but there was like some big movers even like come midday that are just coming out of nowhere. I mean, this stuff like this, like these are what we call account builders, right? Where like, I mean, you can really kind of put a good dent into your account in terms of building them. A little bit of these chunks at a time, because even if you get a small piece of this, it ends up being a good day. So just keep in mind that you want to keep hunting throughout the day. Let's take a look and see what let's see what kind of earnings we got here, and then we'll go into the rest of the watch list here, because there's a lot of stocks with big bases out there that I think we need to be mindful of. You can see here these kind of NNVCs. And what happens when the hard part when the market gets hot is that there's too many of these little guys going, so your watch list gets a little bit clogged. But you can see here like GBT, like this is probably like this type of stock, like because it's a little bit of a lower float, but it's like a little bit higher price, it can like get going really fast if the liquidity comes in. There's not too much of a spread right now, about 7 cents. I would actually add this to the list. Like, who knows if this thing, like, it's stuff like that usually is what gets, usually can get picked up and start skipping dollars. Staff, this is another rounding pattern. So these are all these little guys. If you're into this type of thing, then that's going to be, 'tis the season for it. Look at this. Even some of these EV companies are now starting to push. Yeah, you can see here, right? Like, so you got, even these kind of turds go. So like when you see stuff like Ride Go, workhorses even like starting to cruise, right? Like you can see like RMO. So these stocks were like 30, 40, $50. They've been left for dead. So like some of these things are catching a little bit of a bid, because what'll happen is as the market gets frothier, the theme has been like the most beaten down names, the ones that are down like 80, 90% that are like recent IPOs or recent SPACs, from last year that have been beaten down the most. Those are the ones that are getting picked up. So it's like only a matter of time before you start to see, right? If the market can hold, only a matter of time before you start to see a little bit of bid in some of these bad boys. So, even something like this, like you can keep playing this, but it's up too many days in a row for me. But you can see here on a longer term basis, right? This is a really big base. And at some point, right, there's just nobody left to kind of sell these things. And yeah, Probably should have picked up a few of these, right? Probably should have picked up a few of these bad boys, but this is good. This is good movement over here. So you can kind of keep playing some of these bad boys. Coin is busting through a big level of resistance here. Now this is like a big gap up on it, obviously. That changes things. Like you're on day three of the move, and you're, like a big move to the upside. That's a little bit more tricky. I don't believe this is earnings today either, is it? Believe this was earnings today, but this is like, okay, so if this pulls back, like we can hit this, but it's gonna have to probably pull back like a decent amount before we really dig into it, because a day three gap. So how it works is like day one, day two, you can chase momentum and like buy breakouts. When you're on like day three, day four, day five, you're like getting extended, you really want to make sure that you're only adding on dips, like if you see intraday setups, because those breakouts could be like spots, like where people are shorting into the resistance point. So I would add this, but it'd have to probably come back and fill the gap. Dun 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 dun. Piper Sandler raises Sunrun lost narrow, sales jump. Hey, so you know what? SPWR actually had a positive movement to its earnings. So did ENPH. Now this one is fading off its gap a little bit, but there wasn't much volume on this side anyways. I think if you really think about it, this solar sector is just on fire. Stocks are acting properly. Like this ENPH, like it built the day of the earnings. That's why it's important to always align on multiple time frames when you're looking at PR plays. When this thing took out its base, like this gap is on earnings, right? And so there's a follow through on that, right? They call that post earnings announcement drift, PEDS. And that's a tried and true thing that's been around since the beginning of time. So it's like you get a hot chart, you gap up over it when you beat on your earnings, and you get an announcement drift on these things. And so this solar sector is kind of catching on fire. I'd actually add this run to the list. It's actually a pretty good trader. Run almost always has to pull back a little bit before it goes, but I think it's probably worth a gander. This Labu actually feels more like a swing, but I wouldn't chase on a day three either with the market so extended. PDD, oh yeah, all these little Asian stocks are starting to pop up, right? They went through the lower Bali, and you had this kind of like you're getting an oversold bounce on them. I don't know if there's really anything to them though, beyond that they're dead cat bounces. But this Baba has earnings out, so that can be, that can at least give it a little bit of a boost. Now it looks like they kind of nothing. There's a nothing burger on the earnings, but most of the earnings have been nothing burgers. Like Apple grew like 1%, and it started to ramp, and Microsoft grew like 2%, and it just ran. So that's something to just kind of be mindful of as you go through this too. Hold on one second. I don't know about this. All these stocks are ramping on, earnings, but the location of this is really tricky. Like you have all these kind of levels of overhand. I don't know. Like that's something we've kind of been we've been trading Bible back and forth for a very long time. I don't know if that's like, I don't know if that can be a priority unless it just starts to rip through all this stuff. Then, it's like a whole different ball game. I think the run is like a little bit more decent location. You can see this. Bless me. So I said 30 million shares in volume. I don't know about this. Like this is probably was a one-time thing. If you like heat, like, trading heat is heat, but you do get the 200-day moving average overhead. At least it's a light move. So the big thing is like, when there are pretty light gaps, it's not, 2%. It's not a huge spot. So just, you could probably right? You could probably trade it, but not my personal flavor. Hold on here. Let me go back to the shit. Oh, I don't mind trading off laptop for the next little bit. Whatever. I'm used to it. Hey, this NIO's really coiled up. If these Chinese stocks do get a bid, like this is not so bad over kind of 21, but this is a fucking grinder. Like it's like one of those things. It's like trading lucid. Like you just get stuck like watching it like for like an hour and it moves like $1. And junk. So you like shop, like this is like a really big breakout, but the big hairy Indian butt of it is that right? You're on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, it's a day 5. Watch like I'd set an alert on this. Like if it taps back down near like the 40 spot, then you'll kind of relieve some of this tension here. And you probably get like a decent like little buy. But I wouldn't chase this thing up just because it's up so many days in a row. Same thing, right? SQ like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row. That's a lot. Like you can't really chase that up. It's a good looking chart. Like all these kind of bottoming names, like I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing go too. If it breaks over the 50. Yeah, the tough part is finding the ones that are not too extended. Not tough, but the hot ones are always getting extended. I think this is probably top of the list today, guys. You got the curls for the girls coming up here. You've got a level at 229. Like, frankly, like I think that could go out of the gate if the market holds. Like I'd add that. Same thing. I'd keep UPST on the list too. It's had two nice days, but you can usually get a couple more out of these things. I think you probably have a 50-day moving average magnet, and you got a nice kind of push into this, right? Like we added, fuck, I saw a little early. We added this thing up to the VWAP yesterday, and I lost a little patience on this thing. It took fucking forever. The afternoons have been slow, right? You think it's unless you're in the small caps. Yeah, that's top of the list there. Netflix, UPST, both top of the list. Amazon, Grinder. See this Roblox, like some of these are up too many days in a row. Like this also needs a tap back into this 43, 44. Hey, PayPal had earnings out. Watch this for a day 2. I think that's probably a lot of times these thicker stocks, like when they have like 1 billion, 2 billion share float, the day of the earnings, they like really fart around. There's almost too much liquidity in them. There's too much volume in them. And then they're thick. And so they just don't do anything. A lot of these like thicker stocks, it's actually when the volume dies down that they really ramp. When you don't get so many buyers and sellers into it, it actually, those are the days it ramps. Like I'd keep that on the watch list as for a day 2 play. Let's look on the downside, see if there's anything going. Yeti, post lower physical earnings, and so climb. The Yeti's a bitch to trade. Fuck, man, this thing used to be $350. Yeah. IPOs that sometimes when they're hot, and when they're not, they're not. A lot of these gap downs, and we saw this with JetBlue, and we saw this with Meta. One of the reasons like we're not putting some of these gap downs on the watch list is that what I've seen of recent is like see like right, Facebook, like when these things gap down and they kind of like run into these old supports, they're actually ramping back, off those earnings gap downs. Like see JetBlue, like this day, it had the gap down. And normally we'd be trying to short this thing for the big breakdown because you have that big base. But what's happening with the change of character in the market is people are looking at the gap downs in the stocks as actual buying opportunities, right? It's the same thing, like fucking, right? AMD gaps down like 5-6 points. and it immediately, right, fills up the gap, and then like still the dips are getting bought in it. And you can see like the structure of the setup didn't even change. And like you had really like your nine, it just came down to the 90 MA and just started to rip, and that's happening a lot. So a lot of these like names that you see that are like tech names that, you may have been like, okay, I'm gonna, I normally short this. What's happening is a change of character in the market where, like, look, if this stock like holds at this trend line, you never know. Like this just might rip back because that's what a lot of these stocks have been doing. And the SSR will be on it. So you have that, right? You have that kind of inherent thing. So like even something like this, like you may actually see this thing turn around. That's been the nature of the game. Like Lucid, like this gap down, Lucid's a big turd, but like in the end, it's like just still stuck in range. Will it follow through? I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure. The market hasn't been giving us these gap down shorts anymore just because of the change in the structure of like what's happening. But like I think all of these, we could put it on the list because the big thing is like if the market actually dumps off today, then these will probably follow through. It's just a big if. Like the dips, every time the market's been dumping off for the last couple of weeks, what's been happening is that it's just been getting bought up. Like it'll bear flag intraday, it'll round, and then they rip back. And just something to kind of keep in mind of like, see this RVLV? There's another one, like, this big base. Like, what are the odds it really starts to break under this 25? Normally, we'd be shorting the shit out of this thing for the breakdown, but there's just not that much meat left on these bones. And so a lot of times, like, just like Meta, man, I thought that 155, I'm like, oh, man, when it loses that, right, it's going to just fucking go crazy. And then they just kept bouncing off that level. Wayfair, just another one, right? It was like $400 or $350. Everybody already knows it's a turd. Does it really fade off this area? I don't know. I don't know what you've been told. It ain't the butterfly, it's a Tootsie Roll. Man, this run looks hot though. Rex. Oh, it ain't the butterfly, it's a Tootsie Roll. Croc Extra. Man, how do they make money? Rubber shoes and that's amazing. Oh, what you been told? Yeah, I think there's just easier plays out there. I see this D-Dog, like, all right, pulling back into support. Like, what are the odds it really follows through there? I'm not sure. A lot of these things I think might actually reverse back. Fastly lost wide in. Ooh, amid rising revenue, shares down. I hate when TC doesn't leave these wicks, right? Yeah, this one's been a heater for, not a heater, but it's been a slow rider. I don't know if there's anything in there for us. See, it's like just gapping down back into support. I don't know what you've been told. ARC is down. NVIDIA's down a little bit. What's going on in NVIDIA? Maybe we got some news in the chips or something. Yeah, coin is not waiting for us. One fucker. Only just $88. Add this to the list. This BKKT, guys, we've been trying to I've been watching this one forever. It's got a big break. It's like, I don't want to say the same businesses. Oh, fuck, it's going without us. Mother cock. Add this one if it pulls. This is like, I've been fucking got so many alerts on this fucking stock. It's a similar business. They do like crypto futures or whatever, but I think that could probably be something. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably top list fucking coin. No! Oh, why Vishnu? No. They never wait for us. All right. Add this BKKT. There's actually a couple of these subset blockchain brokers that we can add in. Hold on here. We used to trade a bunch of them. Let's add a couple of these fuckers. Seen it. I think this Equos was one. XRP, Argo blockchain. Okay, some of these are going to pick up some steam. We got Mara too, top of the list. 14 breakout, guys. That's a 16. That's a 6 windows. 14 breakouts. Going to be a heater. Oh, fucking Hood also does. You know what? Hood's top of the list too because Hood also does this shit. And what was the other one? All right. Point. Hood, and then what was that? We got BKKT. All right, all right. That's the list. We're sticking to these bad boys, guys. We know what we got to do today. Good. Let's go have some fun here. All the blockchain stocks. We got some earnings. GBT, Run, Baba, SoFi for a day 2 play. And if we need some shorts, Lucid Yeti. And we're going to have some fucking good old fashioned fun. There's a bunch of other names out here like SI. I'll send you guys the blockchain list I got here. There's a whole host of these things like NCTY and stuff that probably gets picked up. Let's go do what we do, right? Let's go do what we do. I restart my TC2000. Guys, it's been a heater in the chat room of late. Let's make sure we don't fuck up because what happens usually as the market gets frothy, you can get a little bit cocky. And then like towards the tail end, this happened to me so many times, you end up like just, oversizing on something and you lose like all your profits. So you got to be super careful as the market heats up. So does your inherent risk of getting fugazied off like some kind of YOLO play or all-in play. So really, as the market heats up, like towards the tail end, just be smart. You want to almost kind of try to limit the risk down a little bit and control yourself because it's just a matter of time, right, before you get that fucking fugazi. Cool. Let's do this. It's 3:30 here. I've been trying to make quick work out of this bad